In this video, we're going to take a look at the arm motion of the walk. And right now, everything is just pretty flat and even. Like this, the arm basically stays on a straight line. Everything moves lockstep. It's all one unit. And that makes it pretty boring, pretty stiff. So I'm not going to go into detail about everything that you might do, but I just want to sort of loosen this up, get it off of that straight line a little bit, and just kind of play with it. So let's see. So here, what I might recommend is maybe the hand sweeps in just a little bit on the front and the back, and it stays a little wider here, right? So maybe what I'll do is just key in those positions on 6 and 18. I kind of like that as the pass. And then here what we'll do is maybe rotate that just so it comes in a bit, and then just rock it back just a little bit, something like that. And I want that same thing over here at 24. So let me go ahead and just key that again. And then up front here, it looks pretty good. Maybe just kind of rotate it in just a little bit, but I'm okay with how much that's coming in. You could bring it in a little bit more center, something like that. All right, so let's just see how that has. There we go. So now we've got like it's a decent arc that's happening there. All right, so that breaks it up. It gets it off center a little bit. I haven't done the feet yet. The feet are obviously perfectly straight, parallel down this way. We'll get to the feet, but that's pretty good for that basic motion. Now what I'd say is let's add in some drag on this thing. So the shoulder is the thing that is pulling the elbow along. So what we're going to do is we're just going to offset that motion by adding some drag in. So here that's already started forward. So what we'd want to do here is just delay the arm by rotating that backwards, right? So this way, what we'll get now is like a little bit of offset there where that hand will drag back a little bit. And you can be much more extreme with this. You could really pop it hard like this, but for this more sort of realistic animation, um, this is going to work pretty well. We'll still get the feeling of drag without really snapping the joints into a location that they shouldn't be able to get to. All right, and this is where we'll see the majority of the drag on this pull back right here. So from here, really we want the arm to continue moving up through this section. So I'll kind of give it a stronger rotate. And now you'll see that it'll come up to that point and that arm will continue to move. And you see the upper arm is moving backwards and the forearm is continuing to move in that forward arc. Right? And so typically what I would do here is maybe, actually that's probably all right. Just for getting like a generic thing, usually what I would do is offset this a little bit so that this held just a bit ahead of this. And we could probably just do it just by sliding that key 1 or 2 frames back, give it a little bit more interpolation time across that transition. All right, I like it better here. Yeah, that feels smoother, and it's one of these things that you just got to watch it and see. And really, part of what I'm looking at here is, does the forearm move faster through this transition than it does when it's swinging forward? Because it shouldn't, right? I don't want the arm to be moving at a particular pace and then speed up to transition as I rotate the limb. If I do, it'll feel like suddenly the arm sort of snaps ahead. I don't want that. And then typically I would say hold this back a little bit, but I'm going to just let's just see what we get with a very simple kind of drag on here. All right, so that's a very simple drag, but you can see that it breaks up the arms pretty well. It's fairly realistic, but if you wanted to push this further, this is basically what it would be, as you would exaggerate there, exaggerate maybe even still more here. This is a place where you really have to start watching out for, does that forearm feel like it really accelerates through that section now? And then even back here, this would be probably held back a little bit more than it is. But that you'll see a lot more drag in this at this point. And you can see that because of how much drag it has, it actually holds the hand in place back here. So this is counter rotating the rotation of the shoulder, and that hand is staying exactly in place over multiple frames, which reads really wrong in the animation. Typically what I would do again is just kind of have, that's the rotate, so this would hold a little bit more of that here, and then so that it would hold that drag position on the way back too. And you can see that you get a very different look with this, and I would say that this is much more cartoony than what I had in mind. So I'm gonna back this thing up to before I totally tank the joints. Let's just say something like that. So now you can see there's that drag that happens in the forearm there, and as this gets across here, there's a little bit more. And again, you can exaggerate, like this can come back a little bit earlier. In this particular case, that carries that forearm motion through a little bit smoother. All right, so something like that, we still have a good look. It's got some drag on it, but it's not like it's not super cartoony or super exaggerated beyond where it should be. Again, exaggeration is a good thing, so it just depends on what you're doing. For making a generic walk, I'm not going to push it any further than that. So for the hands, it's basically going to be the same thing, except the important thing to consider here is the shoulder motion, the timing of the shoulder is not what is most important for the wrist. The elbow is, right? It's the next joint up the chain. So this elbow should be holding back until here. So there'll be more drag on that, which means that this won't be as affected by drag until this one gets pulled forward, right? That's the idea here. But the drag is very, very minor through here. So let me just kind of futz around with it here. But I would say that it's not going to be at frame 4. It might be more at frame 5 or 6 or something like that. This gets really dragged back, right? So now there'll be a drag, but that drag doesn't hit its peak until after that elbow has already started moving here. And this would hold back, say, maybe somewhere around here. And I don't really need this middle position. I don't really care if it looks exactly like that. So what I'll do is I'll just slide that back to 10, and I'll add more drag into that wrist. Right, so now it'll hold that drag position all the way through this, and then when the hand reverses here, so maybe somewhere over here, that's going to drag all the way back like this. Right, and it could be offset a little bit more. I could take this one and slide this forward since the elbow keeps moving. I want that drag to carry on. Like that elbow's still moving forward really up until around here. This is the motion of it sort of gets canceled out um, by the rotation of the shoulder. But you can see that now we've got that dragging backwards, and then it reverses through this section, which is what I'd want. I'd actually want the wrist to probably move up a little bit faster than it does. That should already be transitioning that direction. So I'll take this and I'll just kind of push it over to 16 here. So do you see how the hand rotates around a pivot point there, but it feels pretty like has a good flow? A single frame, that's a single frame difference, right? So here, as this comes in, it's already transitioning backwards. You move that one frame, and now you have that it's much more fluid for that transition. It's amazing, but one frame makes such a difference in animation. You just got to go through and spend the time to detail this stuff. All right, so that's a pretty fast turn. I didn't change this one. I won't change this one, but I will drag this a bit more here. So I'll add a little bit more drag. Same, we've got that forward drag here. So I'll hold that drag a little longer, and that'll start that transition into that forward motion here. And let's just see what we get out of that. All right, and so, you know, it's a little looser. It's a little looser than it should be for a real generic walk. You can see those hands are just kind of flopping all over the place. And at the back, they sort of hit a wall through this area right here. There's not much going on. So the hands just kind of sit static for quite some time. And maybe what that means is this needs to have a little bit more variation in it. So maybe these are dragged a little bit more at this passing position. I'm sorry, at this contact position. So let me just see what we have here. And this way we'll have a little bit more motion through there. That might be a bit extreme. I'll just try something around there. So I'll just do the same thing, key it on this side too. Right, and so that's 21, that's 16. So it's still diminishing. I would say that probably I don't need that extra key that I just put on there. So let me just take a look at what that looks like on the curve. So this is holding that, so it might be useful. It holds that position a little longer, so I'll leave it for now, and we'll take it out if we don't need it. But this, for sure, right here, we don't want that kind of transition where this is only looking like this because these tangents haven't been adjusted. So this handle and this handle, see how it slows down and then it speeds back up? We want those to be nice and fluid through here. So something like that is a much better transition. This side over here, again, just kind of looks weird because I didn't do it on the pre-infinity. So if I just set that to pre-infinity cycled offset, you'll see that that's a nice smooth curve there. So you always want to do the start and the end on those. So let's just see if that's like, okay, so there's just kind of a stop point in the motion, and I think that's dominantly from what's going on with the counter rotation from the forearm. So I'm going to do the same thing on the forearm because it really does kind of hit a wall there. And so what I want to do is have that continue moving a little bit more than it is. So I'm going to go ahead and sneak a little bit more motion here, and let's just see how that affects the motion. Okay, so let me drop out that one frame. Usually you don't see that one frame sort of uglying it up so much. But that really did make a big difference in this particular case. Just removing that single frame, you can see that it's a pretty fluid motion. And really, what I'm seeing right now are glitches. I'm not sure if it'll show up in the screencast exactly the same that I'm seeing it, but I see little glitches. But they're just because the playback in the window isn't perfect, and that is a good thing to consider. Like this cache playback is really good. But when you want to see what your true motion is, run a play blast of this thing. I won't do it here, but play blasts are timing that you can truly believe. That is the exact timing that you're going to get in a final movie. So trust play blast. This is here as a good reference, and it's usually pretty accurate, but trust play blast as the ultimate guide. So that's the basic idea on the arms. You can see that they're very, very loosey-goosey at this point, much more than they actually should be. So I would take the time, and I guess since I've been doing it for everything else, let me go ahead and do it here. I would, especially on these hands, really reduce this back. Like I push this much further than it needed to be pushed here. So let me just try to take everything and cut it in half. All right, and let's just see what we get there. Right. So that's a lot more in the realm of reality. Like I don't want this to have a super cartoony look, and that's on the right path. It still needs to be tweaked here and there, and really I can see in the transition that the timing, the exact timing of those frames has been shifted just by changing the values. But you can see the difference between the left hand and the right hand, really stiff, all one unit moving together, whereas this one sort of really limbers the thing up a bit. And typically, I won't take the time to do this because this video has already gotten longer than I wanted it to be, but you would extend this down through the fingers too, right? So as this swings forward and turns around right here, maybe it's just a small thing. Maybe it's just here on the thumb, or the thumb sort of straightens up a little bit. I don't have much going on here animation-wise, but even just that amount of thing right there, where the thumb sort of pulls as the wrist reverses, the thumb sort of pulls up and then pulls back down as it flows. Not adjacent frames like I just did, but on the way back. That kind of stuff just loosens up the hands as well. So keep doing the same thing, like one joint to the next, and loosen up the whole hand all the way out to the end of the fingers.